Ginette Matacia. We're at Las Cruces, New Mexico, and I have with me Jeff. Would you introduce yourself, Jeff, and give us a little bit about your background?
My name is Jeff Brady, and I live in Texas, which is down in Big Bend, north of Big Bend National Park. And I've been there for approximately 24 years. And something of the background, I am a professional treasure locator. I have spent close to 16 years in the field locating remnants of Franciscan and Jesuit archaeological sites. And based upon finding these sites, I began looking for artifacts. And the result of hunting this area, I have come to understand a modern method of locating these artifacts.
All right, Jeff. What I'd like to do is go through some photographs and some explanation that might help other dowsers locate treasure. And we have a book here, and what I'd like to do is show you some photographs, and we'll discuss some methods and some facts that the Polaroid camera will actually help the dowser locate treasure. And I wish you would introduce the book you have there with an explanation, and then we'll talk about that.
The book that I utilized to figure out the information on locating treasure was the Urantia book, which is a book that was originally published by the Urantia Foundation, Chicago, Illinois, in 1955. On page 479 in the chapter Energy, Mind, and Matter, there is a section on atomic cohesion, and this is subatomic particle frequency information, which explains the workings of a particle called the mesotron. And I'm going to quote the book on the mesotron so that you can understand what you will be looking for as far as fingerprints of this particular particle that treasure gives out. The mesotron is a particle in the atomic center of the atom, which functions as a balancer for the proton and the neutron. The integrity of the nucleus is maintained by the reciprocal cohering function of the mesotron, which is able to hold charged and uncharged particles together because of superior force mass power, and by the further functioning of causing the protons and neutrons to constantly change places. What this does is this produces a field that is distinctly different from a positive and negative charge. In treasure hunting, gold gives off a fingerprint sign, and it is from learning this fingerprint sign that I was able to gain information about the fingerprint sign of silver and the fingerprint sign of iron, because these three metals are the predominant metals you will find in locating a cache of treasure. And based upon understanding the directions that the lines come off the center of the cache, you will be able to accurately locate with a compass and whatever type of electronic or dowsing apparatus you use, consistent lines on a compass heading for each of the type of materials, gold, silver, or iron. And based upon that, it will allow one to overcome the ghost signal phenomena, which tends to make locating treasure almost impossible by conventional locating methods.
I think what we should do is go back to the Christmas mountains you have in your area. Would you explain that one more time? What happened and that to these mountains at a certain specific time you could see the lights?
Okay. Where I live is in the Christmas Mountains, and it was named the Christmas Mountains by the Spanish mining explorers who named it so because of the great number of flares which come out of the ground over the center of a gold or silver deposit. And there are many natural deposits in this area. And it was from learning and seeing these flares that I began to study how to sort out natural phenomena from man-made caches.
Now, the photographs we have here are also going to be in the explanation of the book too, to show our readers that it is possible to pick up these flares on a Polaroid film. Also, you can see them at a certain time. So what time could you see these flares visible? Was it at night, day, or when did they see these in the mountains?
All right, there are specific times and conditions which facilitate flares. One time where you can see flares is right after the sun goes down. There are also cinnabar pockets out there, so we get red flares.
Explain those cinnabar pockets.
A cinnabar pocket is a pocket of reddish powder, which when mined and mixed with water and heated to around 600 degrees and vapored off like a condenser, produces liquid mercury.
All right. Now, what about early morning? Would these flares show up in the early morning hours as well as the afternoon hours? Late afternoon.
They don't show up in the daytime at all. They only show up after the sun sets all the way till the sun rises. It's only a nighttime phenomenon.
All right. Now, as far as getting into extreme detail, I think the Spanish were seeking out Indians who could see this flare too. And they would take these Indians and learn how to find these deposits because they could see this. This is one thing that I was told. But this phenomenon is mostly at night then, that we're talking about now.
Yes, it's a nighttime phenomenon, and it's a phenomenon that occurs when the relative humidity is, I would say, probably above 60%.
All right. Now, I'm going to give you a photograph of a gold nugget. And I've photographed the gold nugget, and there's a halo at one side. So would you give us a discussion a little bit about the direction when you're photographing the gold nugget as to which area this strikes off, like northeast, southwest, or something of that nature? Would you tell us about that a little bit?
All right. It looks to me like from the photograph that the angle of the sun, that this was taken in the morning.
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct, early morning.
Okay. The angle of the shadow is running west, and the gold flare is running on a northeast line, which is the main line which comes off gold and silver.
All right, now, I think this is important to understand for a treasure hunter because although these flares come off, some of them are not directly over the target that you're looking for. Would I be correct at that?
No, the gold flares are always vertical.
Okay.
The flares that are running on a semi-vertical horizontal line are the mesotron field lines.
All right. Now, in this photograph, in the woods, there's a white flare coming off of that treasure. And I think you indicated once before that this flare was going off to the northwest. This was taken early in the morning, and this flare is in the woods, and there are no leaves on the trees.
All right, this photograph shows two lines coming off the treasure. And what these are the mesotron lines.
All right.
You have one that's coming off running northeast, which is the difference. Gold does not put off a northeast mesotron line, whereas silver does. You also have a western line where it has ghosted and is throwing a vertical ghost line.
Okay. In other words, you have to interpret the photograph, even though it is there, the silver goes one way, the gold might go another way.
They are mirror image lines. Gold has a line on the southwest, northeast, which is the main line, east-west, which is the secondary line, and one third line which runs to the southeast. Silver runs a main line on the southwest, northeast, a secondary line on the east-west, and a third line on the northwest.
All right. Now, we had some photographs of some light flares, and these light flares that came up from a chimney. In other words, the photograph was taken directly at a house, and the light flare came up from this chimney area. And I will pick up this photograph and see if we can talk about it. In other words, if you have a house, photograph the house, and this flare actually is on the outside, but it is right near the chimney area. So would you discuss this particular flare?
Okay, in this picture there are 4 Polaroid prints, and we're talking about the lower left-hand print, which shows the location of the treasure. There is one flare in the center of the chimney, and the location of the treasure is directly below that flare. In the other pictures, there are ghost images because they are not grounded, and they are, from the indication of the shadows, it looks like the picture directly above the chimney picture is an east line flare zone, because there are multiple flare phenomena. The other pictures indicate the one to the upper right side also is a multiple flare phenomena. And it shows that the pictures were taken at different times of the day.
I got you. All right.
It's what I gather from looking at the indications of the light. The picture, it looks like, that was taken of the chimney was taken in the dark. There's only a very small section of the house that's lit up, but I'm only speculating. But it does indicate the presence of ghosting, which is a flare-like phenomena. However, the light coming out of the chimney is actually the center flare, because it exhibits no multiple ghosting phenomena.
Okay.
And where on a photograph, when you shoot it, if you have multiple flare phenomena, then you are not over the treasure. You are dealing with the effect of the mesotron lines which go out of the treasure, coming off tree roots and producing ghost flares off tree roots.
All right. Now, the chimney would be an easier place to use a detector to locate the treasure. Would I be correct on that?
Well, let me say that when you have located the flares by picture and you use your compass to ascertain the direction, if you find flares, you have to take more than one picture of the ghost to establish the location of the center.
Okay, that's exactly what I wanted to know.
Because you won't know from one picture of the flare from which direction the ghost signals are coming from until you establish at least two directions, and this is with a picture only.
Right. All right, let's go to another photograph in northern Arizona where the photograph looks like a rocket accelerating from the ground target. And this has a cap on top. And this has a large flame all around the bottom. Would you discuss this particular one?
Okay, that is an actual gold flare. A gold flare is totally vertical and indicates the center. The cache is directly, or the deposit of gold will be directly below the flare, whether it's a natural or a man-made.
So that is a very good photograph, really indicating, in this subject matter, gold itself, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The effect of the light that is circling the flare is such a large pool that it indicates a very strong, you can notice that the east-west lines, there's your line. I really don't know what direction we're looking at facing this photograph, but from looking at the print, knowing how gold prints, I'm just going to say that you are facing due north.
All right, let me explain this particular photograph. We had a satellite photograph that produced a cross. And in this cross, you couldn't see it on the ground, but we estimated this cross to be approximately wide as a wagon and as long as 80 feet. And this produced image on the infrared film that was taken by a satellite photograph, and we blew that up. And then we went to the field, and this photograph of the rocket type occurred. We also produced a photograph from an airplane. So this, to me, would indicate a large amount of gold. Would you think that would be true here?
Yes, I would say you would have a very large deposit of gold under this, because the amount of radiation that's coming off in terms of the horizontal aspect, the lines are very large in comparison with the size of the mesotron lines which come off a single coin or a small jar of gold. This would indicate, it looks to me like the lines are running. Here's a west line, here's a northeast line. See how it turns? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, there's your northeast line. But it's not giving a very clear southwest line. See, this one is only, it's only giving, it must be that this fingerprint that comes off because I don't know the relative size of there's nothing in this picture that gives me any indication of relative size. I don't have any idea how large.
The area is covered.
Yeah,
This area covered is approximately about 80 feet.
this.
I would say 80 feet or more.
Oh, this photograph.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's incredible. That is incredible. That would be a size of a cache extremely large to produce that big of a print.
All right. I would like to go one step further. As far as locating the goal, we need some sort of electronic equipment to pinpoint this. So each catch would be a special case in itself. In other words, I, in my own experience, have not found two catches almost identical. They all seem to be different. Would you agree on that?
They're different in it has to do with the terrain in which they're buried in. But the lines seem to always go the exact compass heading off the center. They may weave depending on if the ghost lies upon a rock or a tree root. To say that the ghost that they will put out will be multiple ghosting on each line. It will not be that each line sends out only one ghost. For the duration of the line, which can run sometimes miles, depending on the size of the cache and the terrain, you can have multiple ghosts on each line. And the ghosts are not a true representation of the size of the cache. The ghosts are much higher for electronic equipment than the actual center or down. You'll find the ghosts to be much hotter because they are radiation.
In other words, according to the book and some of my experience, and I wish you would give me some other idea, that this radiation occurs when the sunlight strikes the gases or location of the catch, which has to be interpreted correctly. Otherwise, it's not going to do the treasure hunt any good. Am I correct on that?
Correct. It must be accurately analyzed for each cache, but the print will remain the same and the lines will remain the same. The interpretation of the terrain is the factor that makes each cache different.
All right, now I'm going to go into a case of the dowsers in Georgia experiencing, they buried a precious metal in the ground, and every 15 minutes they located it during the day. And they got an elliptical form, and it went approximately 500 feet north and south, and approximately 40 feet east and west. Now, as far as their reaction goes, would this be one of the major things that happen that why dowsers can't find treasure, just out dowsing? Would you explain? In other words, these are ghost images they're picking up. Would I be correct on that?
From the information I have, targets that are buried under 2 years do not produce accurate ghosting phenomena.
In other words, I have been told by other dowsers that if the gold or silver has been in the ground a long time, it will produce a larger elliptical form. In other words, a ghost image. Would I be correct on that?
Yeah. Gold and silver targets that have been buried over 2 years, with each successive year, increase in mesotronic frequency strength because the sun charges them and produces force fields. And what they are reading is the force fields.
Okay, in other words, if you're going to douse the target itself, you're going to have experience. And as far as when you douse the location, give us an idea of how you do it and avoid the ghost imaging problem.
Okay, when I douse a treasure, and I will give a specific example of one which I just recently doused, I usually start from the south and work north. I usually sweep from west to east because I'm looking to pick up the main line. And when I can pick up a main line ghost on a southwest northeast line, that will lead me immediately to the treasure. And I am not distracted by the east-west line, which is a secondary line, or the southeast line, which is a third line associated with lunar ghosting. And lunar ghosting on gold occurs in the southeast and along the arc from the northeast main line to the secondary west line. So that when I do look, I try to specifically immediately locate the main southwest northeast line. And if I find a ghost on this compass heading, then I am verified that I have a cachet. And what I do is, when I locate a ghost on this main line, is say I find a ghost in the southwest. Well, I set my compass on it, and it'll have, a ghost will only have two lines coming out of it. Because the line coming off the treasure will, let's say the treasure is going toward the southwest, this mesotron line, and it lodges on a tree root. And you get a pull to this tree root. Well, you have a very hot spot. You would circle it and find where the other line coming off it going to the southwest would be. And then you establish that you have a ghost and that you are on an actual line going in a southwest direction. What you would do is go back to the ghost and find the line coming off of it that goes northeast, and track it with your electronic equipment or your dowsing equipment, and track it with the compass, and it will immediately take you directly to the center.
So this is field dowsing. We're not doing it on a map.
No, this is field dowsing.
Right. Now, if you were first doing your preliminary work on a map, give me your reaction in the time. Does it make any difference first for the time that you're dowsing on a map, day or night? Let's go into that first. This is the first recon type.
Okay, for map dowsing, it makes no difference at what time you douse a map. I usually do not find ghost signals on a map because a map does not hold the particle charge that the sun is creating on the treasure in the ground. So map dowsing eliminates the location of ghosts. At least it has been in my work.
Right. I was just wondering, for example, I usually locate all of my gold at night, and I seem to do better than the daytime. And I was just wondering what you found out.
I usually douse in the last hour before the sun goes down because the charge to the west is so strong that I can approach from the southwest, and I know that if there is a treasure, it's going to be throwing a charge so strong to the west that if I get any pulls to the west, I immediately look to the southwest to find the main line. Because when the sun goes down, all of the energy that the sun has been charging of the treasure all goes back to the center immediately as soon as the sun goes below the horizon.
Right.
And that way I'm able to approach the treasure right when it is at its most
prime location time, which is exactly when the sun goes down, at the twilight time.
Now, in the photograph we have also in the book, it has a cap on top. And I haven't understood a great deal about the photographs, but do you have any idea why this particular photograph seems to have a halo at the top of the shaft?
Yes, I will explain what that is. What gold makes in the formation of, I will talk about, there are two types of energy. One of them is ionization, and ionization is the flare.
That's the vertical shaft.
That is the vertical shaft. The ball is plasmic. There are two forms of particle energy. Plasmic tends to be just like what it indicates. It is a semi-material fluid like plasma. It is fluid. It is a plasmic ball of energy, and that is the plasmic ball of energy that I have been able to locate on a horizontal plane. But this is the first time in a photograph that I've really seen it with your photographs, that it indicates that not only is the plasmic ball, this must have been taken during the daytime.
Correct.
Okay. The plasma ball must be taken during, I would say, just from the shadow line, must have been taken probably between 2 and 4 in the afternoon, I would say, because the plasma ball is vertical right at the top. When the sun goes down, that plasma ball goes right back down that ion line. That's what threw it up there, like a juggler. It threw it up. And when the sun goes down, that plasma ball goes right down, and it goes right over to the east, on the east line, and hovers in the jolt zone.
So the treasure on that particular site would be to the east of that vertical shaft?
No, the vertical shaft is directly over the center.
Oh, the center of it. Okay, I'm with you now.
Okay. When the sun goes down, that plasma ball will go right back down and go over to the east in the jolt zone. Which is, in treasure hunting, there are stories about the first person usually digging up a cache dies.
Okay, explain that, because that's very important.
Okay. This plasma ball is just, it's such a concentrated form of energy. Let's say let's just hypothetically say that this is several tons of gold.
Right.
All right. As far as the mass, let's say it's just 1 ton of gold.
Right.
That indicates the total charge of 1 ton of gold in a ball that may be the size of a basketball.
Correct.
Okay. When the sun goes down, that basketball size off this will go back down this ion that's produced it, because this is a mesotron line, a vertical mesotron line, and it is literally holding that in an anti-gravity field. And that's what this plasma ball is. It's anti-gravity energy. And when the sun goes down, that ball will travel right back down that line, and it will go over to the east. And that ball will hover on the east line at 90 degrees in a zone at some distance. It may be close, it may be far, depending on the size. And if you douse and tap into that plasma ball, I will explain. I've tapped into a plasma ball before. 15 to 30 seconds of contact with a plasma ball can kill you.
This would be a treasure hunter that would be digging east of that point?
If a treasure hunter dug or was dowsing on the east side of a treasure, after the sun goes down, that plasma ball will be in the east. If you douse that eastern ball, it is so concentrated that it produces a shock to your central nervous system and produces a heart attack or stroke. like symptoms. It actually is an overdose of plasmic energy.
Right now, as far as digging that, give us a digging time, or what period of time when you would
Anytime is an okay time to dig gold. Located. You have to approach it between the west and the southwest line. You have to, because that's the cool zone for all of the energy that has been sent out in its form. At least this I've located. It's almost like where everything else is being propelled outward. It's a vacuum spot, in which there is. If you read in that zone, you won't believe. You won't believe that you found a treasure. You'll think you've lost it because it's a vacuum zone. On my chart, it says the safe zone, because all the energy is going to the center there. It's very cool, and you can approach digging from that direction.
Right now, if you are dowsing that particular area, what you would do is start in that southwest and work your way toward the northeast until you get a reaction to what? What question would you ask at that point?
Are you talking about from the ghost to the center? Or,
correct. From the
okay.
ghost to the center.
Okay. If I try to look for a ghost usually on the southwest line, because somewhere to the southwest pointing northeast is the main line, and all the lines will intersect that line on the treasure. They may not intersect it exactly over the center, but they intersect it on that line because there are influences that shift it. It could be location near a water stream. Water tends to change the mesotron field as far as being directly over the center of the cache, but it will be very close if it is associated with water.
Now, as far as electronic equipment, we could set up electronic equipment to help pinpoint it at this time. Would that be correct?
Yes. When you're traveling, when you're working on a compass heading from the southwest to the northeast, following ghosts back to the center, there is an area between the west and the southwest that is, it is very cool, and this is the area that you can work yourself close to because there's no shock effect in this area between the west line and the southwest line. There's no shock effect at all.
So what we're saying here is that if a treasure hunter locates the center, it's all right to dig at that point.
Dig on the south, between the west and the southwest is where you dig.
Right.
You will not run into that little plasma ball.
Right now, if they miss this and get to the northeasterly side, then that's where the danger zone is.
The danger zone is directly on a 90-degree heading off the center, on a compass, directly 90 degrees. Because the plasma ball is associated with the sun. The sun creates the plasma ball.
All right.
If you're on a northeast line and you find a ghost, 2 lines, you turn to the southwest and walk it back to the center. If you're on the west or east line, the plasma ball will not be there in the daytime. It's going to be up here.
On top of that,
On top of that ion pillar, the flare. So that, but you can get easily distracted on an east-west line if you're hunting, and because the east-west line tends to go out, so they're very the secondary line. And the ghosting, most treasure hunters get lost on the east-west line. Because I got lost on the east-west line. Because
going back to the size of the cache, let's take, for example, they've always asked me questions someone buried a jar of money. All right, now on these small catches, the latest thing I've had is that the Polaroid will pick up these flares approximately 10 feet away, but if you get more than 50 or 60 feet from that small catch, it will not photograph. Have you any experiences on that?
No, I have never photographed any phenomenon.
Okay. Now, as far as the field dowsing goes, the size of this flare, as far as the length from the target itself, one person told me the longer time it's been in the ground, he says it went 8 miles south in the northern hemisphere, and that was his experience. Now, when you talk about a coin and a small one, how soon can you pick up the distance out in the west side of that target?
The ghosting that occurs on the south is lunar ghosting. It is not associated with the sun whatsoever. Lunar ghosting will produce a gold flare in the south.
All right, so
But it is different than what it will be a very short duration flare. It will not be a constant flare. It will only be something that occurs when the temperature and the moisture content is at a certain, it's usually around in the mid 60s, early 70 degrees with a humidity content over 60%, or you could get a ghosting flare of gold in the south. And if you saw that, then it would indicate the treasure is due north of that flare phenomena, but that's not a true flare. It's a ghost flare, and it's very short duration.
all right. Now, the other thing we were talking about previously, I think a lot of dowsers always suggest that they start working in the area of locating underground water to get the experience of feeling exactly the target area. But now when we transfer from water dowsing to gold dowsing, would you comment like you did today? For example, a lot of people start out to locate treasures. You understand what I was talking about? What is he in for?
A treasure hunter that is inexperienced in the phenomena which caches produce without explicit knowledge of what they do will not be able to locate caches. That is why there are so many caches, so few of them found. Water dowsing would give a treasure hunter an experience with the phenomenon. I can tell you in my own instance that I doused the water. Someone asked me to douse the water because they had missed it. The whale had missed it, and I said, well, I'm not a water dowser, but I apply the same principles that I use in treasure. And that is, I understood the radiant field around matter. And a treasure hunter would be wise to understand that there are blue fields when he douses water, you can pick up the magnetic field of the water stream. And many times, dowsers that are inexperienced, when they read the magnetic field, will associate it with the center instead of taking the time to take 3 readings, because you have a field around everything, a magnetic field. And so by learning water dowsing,
they would be able to grasp natural phenomena that they will not confuse when they are dealing with precious metal dowsing.
Okay. Now, I'd like to jump once into the coin. We took some photographs today of the radiation of a coin, and you were explaining that you picked up 3 positions.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right. Would you explain that a little bit in relation to the coin that you had in your hand?
All right. The metals, aside from the mesotronic field, produce an electron radiation field. They produce several fields. Just a magnetic electron field will have, what I do is I usually sweep, again, from the west to the east when I hunt. I have a specific way. I usually face north, or if I'm dowsing something, I'll always start on the left side and work to the right, because as I douse, I pick up the first sign of the magnetic field line, the extremes of the magnetic field, and that's the first sensation that you will feel. And many think that that is the center. But what you do is you get one feeling for the field. The second feeling will be almost magnetic. You'll feel it, but it will not feel as hot. That's number 2. And then you'll keep going to the right, and you'll feel the magnetic field on the other side of the coin. And that's the periphery of the field. And so you have 3 points that you've just touched. And I usually do from the left to right, the magnetic field, the center, the right magnetic field, that's 1, 2, 3, and then back to the left to the center field again, 4, and you will have located the center.
All right. Now, as far as the dowsers go, it would be better that they practice this at home. And I think Abby Mermet in his book, which is out of print now, had the same deal. They had a circle of a magnetic field. And if you do this with the coin at home, you'll get an idea of what it is to treasure hunt. Would I be correct on that?
You will not get the ghosting phenomena on a freshly buried, or if a coin is sitting on the surface. You will read the magnetic field, and you will read the mesotron fingerprint lines which come off a coin. And so learning to read these particular phenomena with a coin is absolutely essential. I have practiced for months to locate treasure by practicing around my house. I will place coins or drawers of coins and bury them, knowing they're there, and I will approach them to read how they feel and the distinct phenomena of the magnetic field and the mesotron print. And it is highly essential to understand those 2 situations in dowsing before you locate treasure.
All right. I have one other thing that I have found through an engineer, and I want you to comment on this. When you have a metal detector in the hands of a dowser, this metal detector is enhanced because of the dowser, the operator. In other words, if you would take an ordinary person who is not a dowser, the 2 of them will actually get different readings, or the sensitivity resulting from a experienced dowser and a non-experienced dowser. Would you comment on that area for me, for example? Using a detector in the field after you've located something with the dowsing tools.
Okay, I'll just give my own experience. I located a cache of gold bars in a vault underground that was 45 feet underground and 45 feet from the bank of the arroyo that it was buried in a natural cave. It was ghosting a quarter mile away in a group of trees on the northeast line. I originally, with electronic equipment, located a ghost in the circle of trees. The ghost was not relative to the size of the cache. It was 15 feet by 4 feet long, a very long cache. The ghost was the size of a softball. The metal detector picked up the ghost.
That's what I wanted to be sure here, that in certain instances, the dowsers in Georgia said that the actual target site was not available on the metal detector during certain hours of the day. And it just went dead. There was no way to locate the cache. But in this case you're talking about, it's possible to locate the ghost image with a metal detector.
It's very possible to locate the ghost with metal detectors and be fooled.
Be fooled. That's exactly what I wanted to point out, because I worked for 6 weeks in the desert, and you have to know your metal detector type. And I had a different type of metal detector. I picked up 3 caches in that instance, whereas the pulse detector would not pick up anything.
Well, I'd like to say that I live in an area that's extremely dry. I live in a mountainous desert area. And so there is a difference in probably, I'm just going to speculate because I haven't hunted in, say, Georgia where it's wet. And I would just say that the ions tend to work better and collect much better in a dry environment. And it could be that if they were hunting in a wetter environment, due to the solar activity, the metal detectors, it was not even, the ground and the humidity was dampening, literally by water, dampening the electronic ionization. And that may be why they could not feel it in the daytime when the sun was directly overhead or in its zenith.
All right, we have one more area that someone asked me about. Was it possible to find this over water? In other words, they buried this material and it was underwater. And I've been working on that, and I really don't have an answer yet, but I do know how to use electronic equipment in the water. But what happens to the ghosting effect if it's buried underwater, like a pond or edge of a river?
If it's underwater, not buried next to water, it will not produce a flare. It will not produce ghost signals.
All right, so if you're dowsing and it's in the water, then tell me what the phenomena is received from the dowser at that point.
If you're dowsing and you have gold that's buried, let's say you have a shipwreck or you have something that was buried that has subsequently been covered by water, then it's probably the easiest caches to locate because the gold will be cold due to the effect of the positive ionization of water.
So we should not be able to actually use a Polaroid to locate a cache underwater. Would I be correct on that?
Correct. You cannot locate a cache with camera for the effects, because water produces a totally different phenomena.
Okay, now I've worked on a number of catches in the water, and it seemed to be easier to do.
It's much easier.
That's what I've experienced.
It is much easier.
And a lot of times what happened, they had boats, and they had the ore in the boats, or the silver bars or the gold bars, and somehow the boat was wrecked, or they dumped it at the time they were under attack,
Correct.
and it went into the water itself. Now, as far as any other conditions go, let's go out and say it's raining on this desert, and you start working with an extremely wet desert in your area. Let's just speak of your area only.
Okay. I'll tell you now my actual experience with working with a cache that was buried next to a river. The ghost lines off this cache will jump the water.
Will you explain that?
Okay. What water does is water will define what I call the rainbow arc. Usually there's some folklore at the end of the rainbow as the pot of gold. Well, water plays a great role in being able to dominate the ions that the sun and the gold interact. The sun actually charges the ion particles, but water will dominate them. So what this was doing was it was throwing a ghost signal in a rainbow arc pattern, a quarter of a mile over a river, and landing on the west side of the river and producing a very, very hot gold ghost.
In other words, we're trying to say that in this particular case, you could pick up this rainbow effect.
If you were on the west side of the river and you found the ghost, and you did not understand how the water affects the ions in the rainbow effect, you could not locate the treasure. You would not know where to go after you had located the ghost, because the lines were not in the ground. They were in a rainbow arc over the water. They literally jumped, they came out of the ground and they went over the water, and they did not land until they went completely over the water. I mean, that's how different it is, what water affects it, because the water completely, I don't understand it, but it controls the ions.
Okay, we had a case in Texas, and they have been digging there for a year, and they've dug holes all over the river bottom area. And I think what's happened is they do not understand the phenomenon. That's why they're digging holes, and they've never found the catch.
They're digging ghost signals.
They're digging ghost signals. That's what I want to bring up here.
They are digging ghost signals.
Now, I was on the beach searching for gold rings, and I'm going to briefly give a case, and then you explain to me.
Okay.
I had a detector that went underwater. I was about knee deep, and a dowser, not a dowser, but a metal detecting person was in front of me, and he was going down the beach in a trough. All right? We were picking up materials. He walked right over the gold ring, and I found the gold ring. And another man on the beach said, the first man should have found it, but he didn't. And he was actually, I was walking in his footprints. And I found the gold ring with my detector. Now, would you comment on that particular phenomenon?
Well, if his detector, gold hides so well that it can repel the charge of the detector. If the charge coming off the detector, let's say the frequency that the detector was emitting, if it was a frequency that was weaker than the frequency that the gold was putting out, it will push the signal away from it. So your detector was operating on a frequency that was powerful enough to loop that ring and thus establish conductivity. His detector did not have a proper frequency or strength, for whatever the brand was, to literally loop that gold and establish conductivity.
All right, now I would like to go one step further on this because a lot of people, I think, pass right over the gold, right over the silver, even though they got a detector. And what I usually do is I take a piece of gold with me, and a lot of people call this a witness. But I think it's just as important to tune a detector to what you're looking for as well as what the dowser should tune himself. Now, you were talking about using a coin, like a Mexican coin. Would you explain why you use those Mexican gold and silver coins when you're working?
Okay, the Mexico Mint was established in 1536. It was the original mint in the New World. The standards for the Mexico City Mint were so exact that the United States coinage system was based upon the weight and size and purity of the Mexican mint, because Mexico, the money that Mexico minted was more used than the United States coinage up until the 1870s, when large amounts of gold and silver were located in the United States. And I use Mexican coins because most of the coins that I hunt for are based upon those standards. And I always tune, when I dowse, I will tune to a coin before I hunt so that I am attuned, just like a musical instrument. You tune up before you play. It's the same in metal detecting. You tune up before you hunt, or you cannot be 100% sure of the signals that you're reading.
That's the way I thought, because even though the metal detectors give off a frequency and you're picking up and you have to assume, but I don't think you can assume anything. I think you've got to get these samples to work with every time you hunt whatever it is you're going to hunt. In other words, each case is different. I understand that. But as far as really picking up a target, unless you know your equipment and know it's tuned to that particular frequency, then I think you're really walking around wasting a lot of time. But I'd be correct in that area.
Yes, you'll be assuming, which you cannot do in treasure hunting.
Right.
You have to be specific, and you have to know that either your dowsing or your electronic equipment is exactly picking up. If you're looking for gold rings and they're 14 karat gold rings, get a 14 karat gold ring and tune. If you're beach hunting, you tune to a 14 karat gold ring, because that's predominantly what most rings are. Rarely do you get 18 or 22 karat.
All right, I'll tell you what I'd like to do at this point. Let's sum up, in general, all we've been talking about and just give the treasure hunter some idea of what he's in for if he's going to dowse for gold or silver in this respect. In other words, just sum the whole thing up we've been discussing here.
Okay. If you're going to locate caches as opposed to coin shooting, you have to be specific in your approach. You have to have a compass. It is impossible to hunt a cache without a compass. Coin shooting, it's good to have a single coin of gold and silver to tune your detector or your molecular frequency. Say someone's using a molecular frequency locator, like an electroscope or some of the type models on the market, similar. You have to tune specifically to those coin alloys if you're going to find coins. At least it's better. Okay, for cache hunting, you must have a compass. You must have fingerprint signs of the mesotron field in order to identify these lines which come off the particular metals. And I'm going to interject here that I'm going to give an understanding of how you will be confused. Let's say you have an iron chest which contains both gold and silver coins. Iron produces 12 lines every 30 degrees and goes heavily to the northeast as far as its main ghost off iron. Silver produces 5 lines, 1 line in the southwest, 1 line in the northeast, 1 line in the west, 1 line in the east, and 1 in the northwest, with its main ghosting in the northwest. Gold produces 5 lines, the main line in the southwest and northeast, secondary lines in the west and east, and the third line in the southeast, with lunar ghosting possible in the daytime from the northeast line in an arc to the west and due south. To approach cache hunting, you must use either in the very early morning or late afternoon or nighttime. It's not a good idea to hunt for caches in, say, 11 o'clock to 4 o'clock because the effects cancel out the center.
That's one of the major things that I've experienced, that if you're going to hunt it, you've got to have the experience to know the time of day you're working on it and the time everything goes down. Would I be correct in that?
Yeah. Time is very essential in hunting a cache.
As far as we could go on to a next subject matter, but I think what we'll do is we'll let this one go at this point, because I think the treasure hunter at this point really understands that it's not a simple process to douse the treasure unless he has a lot of experience and actually goes to the field to do it. But I'll be
a treasure hunter with no one teaching him field experience and no knowledge of these phenomena, only by divine guidance can locate treasure.
Well, thank you very much. Until we meet again, we'll have another session on another phenomena of the treasure hunting as far as instruments or location, and then that way will help the hunter understand how to do it. Thanks very much, Jeff.
You're welcome.